All right, real quick, I realized after having class today that I went to look at the textbook to see if you had the notes there to kind of fill out for the test, and I realized you didn't have it all in the textbook. Well, so I'm going to wrap this up real quick, and it should be 5 minutes of notes. So we kind of all left off with the Niagara Movement. We said this is one of the first civil rights organizations that's formed around 1905 by W.E.B. Du Bois. And whites and blacks put this together. They got together to discuss protests and action plans for equality, but they also wanted to promote equal access education for African Americans, or more education for African Americans. That way they could groom better leaders. And so the Niagara Movement kind of led into what eventually becomes the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, which was founded a few years later in 1909. W.E.B. Du Bois was instrumental in founding both. The NAACP is still around, though, and it's still very instrumental in fighting for equality. So in 1908, Du Bois, the Niagara Movement, and white progressives founded this new organization, which formed the next year in 1909, the NAACP. Their mission was to abolish all forms of segregation and to increase education opportunities for African American children. So their mission was to abolish all forms of segregation and to increase education opportunities for all African American children. So they become like the first mainstream national civil rights organization. By 1920, over 100,000 members were part of the NAACP. And the main way they fought against segregation is through lawsuits. Not necessarily through massive protests and demonstrations like you're going to see in the 1950s and 60s, but you're going to see them filing lawsuits in federal courts, state courts, sometimes all the way to the Supreme Court, challenging Jim Crow and segregation laws and other discriminatory laws in America. So the NAACP, that was their main goals. The other thing they do is also propose anti-lynching laws. So in the late teens, early 20s, they're also proposing federal anti-lynching laws. Congress won't pass them, but they are trying to press for anti-lynching laws to get passed to help address the African American community. But like I said, overall, African American community is not being supported by the National Progressive Movement. So they're trying to push for these changes, but it's just not really happening yet. The last thing I have on here is the National Urban League. This was founded in 1911 to help African Americans who are migrating out the South to northern cities. So this is kind of like another scholarship funding type thing where you have African Americans who are leaving the South can get help in funding through the National Urban League. And that was supposed to help create more self-reliance and economic advancement among the African American community as they're moving from the South to help get them to the North and to make them more prosperous as well. So these are all different ways that progressive African Americans were helping. But like I said, the progressive movement did not really try to address African Americans or civil rights issues in this time period. But that's it. That's where we're stopping. So that's the whole test is going to cover chapters 25, 27, 28, 29, covering urbanization, immigration, foreign policy with like imperialism, and then the progressive era as well too. So all that's going to be covered in this test. Make sure you study. Make sure you look at old unit tests as well, units 1 through 7. 55 questions tomorrow, and you got to be finished within the hour as well too. And feel free to write on the test, all that normal stuff. Friday will be the essay. It'll be 40 minutes timed with the essay. So that's about it. Have a good day. See you Friday.